order. The Public Hospital District Number 14 County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. It is Thursday, October 15th, 2019 at 6:35. We wait for Dr. Whitcock. We're going to go ahead and move forward. Would you like to stand for the flag salute?
It's over there.
Who moved it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I hear a motion to approve, add, or change the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
President Norris?
Yes.
Would you like to do roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I would. I missed that. Roll call.
President Norris?
Here.
Vice President Herron?
Here.
Secretary Spikers?
Here.
Commissioner Pollard?
Here.
Commissioner Carter?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Okay, so approval of the agenda. Anybody make a motion to approve it?
We did,
Okay, so it's all done? We all voted?
I believe so. We didn't vote.
I
There
don't
was
think
no
we
vote.
voted.
There was no vote, Madam President.
Okay,
I
is there a
believe there was
second?
Commissioner Spikers moved. I did not actually hear who seconded.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, one opposed? Communications. I'm first on the communication things. Emma and Jen and I went to a conference this last week that was very interesting, had a lot of information from WISHA. Some of the information that they shared had to do with computer invasions and people hacking, which I thought was rather interesting. And Jen was rather engaged in that because of her business. So it was interesting. It was a good conference, and I'm glad we went. Do you want to say anything about it, Emma?
Well, of course, they also, well, for Friday it's all board governance, and then for Thursday it was more like the brain, what was that, the brain study?
Yeah,
What was
we had a
that?
couple
That
things.
was quite a very interesting hidden brain. Talks about how we store a lot of this and how we react either positively or negatively.
Mhm.
They talks about how animals are treated and they are rewarded when they do good behavior. Yet when our kids and they are
Positive and negative.
positive information. So that was I enjoyed that topic because one of the things what was that I said I have a hard time understanding the negative, how we will reward our children if they don't do their homework instead of, some parents will say, okay, I'll give you $5 as an incentive for you to do your homework. Or, did you do your homework? I have a hard time trying to, which direction should I do? Do I reward or do I be more consistent in my discipline or whatever? So anyway,
We also listened to somebody
that's one of them.
that was elderly,
The
and
elderly.
she was talking about end-of-life choices and how she felt about whether she was going to have surgeries or not.
Mhm.
She was sitting in a chair, had crutches, but she was very alert, very informative, and I appreciated what she had to say. Do you want to share anything, Jen?
For the Friday, the governance.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from Friday
Yeah.
was the importance of information security,
Mhm.
and looking forward to following up with that on some of our committees.
All right. All righty, Dr. Whitcup is not here. General Counsel.
Yes, and if I might suggest that upon Dr. Whitcock's return, that the board allow her to make her presentation. But other than that, I'll proceed at this time.
Please, yes.
So at the last meeting, we had talked about the gavel. And there is not a specific section in Robert's Rules that pertains to the gavel, but it is mentioned in Robert's Rules in 4 different places. Unfortunately, I did not have to read 748 pages of Robert rules to find it, because there's an index. Good for me. So I only had to go through the index and find all the places it's referenced. So there are 4 places that it's referenced and pertains to, pertaining to recess, adjournment, debate, and dealing with offenses. So the first one is dealing with a recess. And it goes on to tell you the forms as to how to make the recess, but the reference to the gavel is when the chair, the president would say, the ayes have it, and the meeting stands recessed, or in recess, for 15 minutes, rapping once with the gavel if desired. This is discretionary then, so Robert's Rule says that you can gavel, lightly rapping, not a rap song, but a lightly rapping of the gavel, not singing, to then go into recess. The second place it appears is called an adjournment. And again, it goes on to say that the adjournment may be signaled by a single rap of the gavel. Now that sounds like a rap, you know, we put a little tune to this. But again, that is discretionary. If you, when you move to adjournment, you're not required to, but the chair can say, and you know this from your prior training I've given you, if there is no objection, the meeting will now adjourn. Pause. Since there is no objection, the meeting's adjourned. You can slightly rap your gavel, but you're not required to do so. The third time it appears is on rules governing debate. And this is an interesting verbiage. It says it should be noted under legitimate parliamentary procedure, there is no such thing as gaveling through a measure. I didn't know what gaveling through a measure was or is, but it goes on to say that the right of the members to debate or introduce secondary motions cannot be cut off by the chair by attempting to put a question to vote so quickly that no member can get to the floor. So it goes on to identify that the chair then must say, are you ready for the question? And if they're not, you must continue through. The chair has to give ample opportunity for members to claim the floor, and the members should seek the floor. So it just says you're not supposed to gavel through measures or motions, allowing everybody to have the opportunity to be heard. And the final reason and purpose for use of gavel, according to Robert's Rules, is on page 2 that I've provided to you. It says in dealing with any case of disorder in a meeting, the presiding officer should always maintain a calm, deliberate tone, although he may be increasingly firm in a situation if it demands it. Under no circumstances should the chair attempt to drown out a disorderly member either by his own voice or the gavel. So you're not supposed to gavel. You're not be permitted to be drawn into a verbal duel. If unavoidable, however, proper disciplinary proceedings to cope with, immediate necessity can be conducted while a disorderly member speaks. It goes on to say that when that is a breach of order by members, and it's only a slight breach of order, such addressing another member instead of a chair or in debate, a single instance failing to confine remarks to the merits, that chair simply raps lightly. This is not discretionary. If you find, in fact, there is debate that's occurring that is a breach of order, being out of order, then you should simply rap lightly, point out the fault, advise the member to avoid it, and then move on. The member can then continue speaking if he commits no further breaches. So that's the time that you should utilize that, and it is not so much as a discretion where you should be simply rapping. So that is your Robert's Rules of Order for this evening on the use of gavel.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you're most welcome.
That's interesting, because somebody told me at our last WISHA conference at Chelan that if people aren't quiet, use the gavel. That's what he said to me. So this is
You
good.
should not engage in a verbal debate with your gavel.
Okay. All right, approval of the minutes, consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to do that? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go on for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, then we're done.
Parliamentary inquiry, are we talking about both sets of minutes?
I was doing the approval of the minutes September 12th, affiliation, December 12th, regular meeting, September 25th, work study, and position credentialing.
So all of the minutes?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome. Committee reports, Finance Committee, Mr.
Thank
Spikers.
you. We had an outstanding month again.
I have a feeling that it's going to be scaled back a little bit by the next cost report. It's really, really hard to measure and get a sense of what exactly our payments are going to be. We're getting better. We're getting much better. And so, as you recall, the first 6 months, we had estimated low. So we decided to increase, or actually last year, we decided to increase our allowance, contractual allowance, through the Meridian reimbursement rates. And, but anyway, we're at changing that position, 214,000, which is, you know, I'm sorry, net income 214 versus a budget of 88. It's probably going to be closer to 88 by the end of the year. It's going to be very close, I think. The point I want to make is we're doing pretty well, and there are some things that we're working on. As you recall, we have a huge Medicare Advantage infiltration of our swing beds, which is not a bad deal. It's just we don't get paid right away.
Paid as quick.
Yeah, we don't get paid right away.
Yeah.
So that has affected our AR. There are other things that have affected. For instance, there was a vendor issue, and there were some new hires. Apparently, let's see here. There's a meeting set with HRG, our accounts receivable contractor, and we're supposed to trend downward in the next 2 to 3 months. We hope to be towards 55 by the end of the year instead of 62. I have a question mark about there were some coding issues, and I know that the other thing I wanted to point out is if you look at our annualized actual and required days cash on hand, we have 60. We meet the bond covenants, but it's just at the bond covenant. So one thing we do know is we will be getting approximately $600,000 cash report refund shortly. We're hoping to have it today, but it'll probably be maybe in the next couple weeks.
Most likely, we followed up with the contract.
So that's going to increase our days cash on hand, probably 6 days or so.
Code blue, all clear. Code blue,
So,
all clear. Code blue, all clear.
The other thing is this month is a 3 paycheck month, and so that depleted some of the cash. So we're still within contract covenant compliance, bond covenant compliance, and we hope to be getting a little higher here. I'm hoping in the high 60s at least by the end of the year, maybe 70.
Oh,
Steve.
days, yeah.
So that should not be an issue, maybe even higher, but I'm hoping.
We'll probably end up 68, 72.
Well, that's what I thought.
Okay. I know, I bracketed it for you, David.
So, anyway, what does that all mean? I mean, we were at one point, within the last couple of years, we were up at 90 days cash on hand, up towards 100. So I keep asking Steve, "Are we depleting cash? What's going on?" And he says, "No, we're not depleting cash. We're not getting reimbursed as much as we were because of the interest allowable depreciation on our building is lower than it used to be. So that's a big factor, and we're getting paid less as a result per patient day. I think I mentioned this at one point, we were at almost $4,000 per patient day in 2015. we're now at about $2,800.
No, 2,900.
So that's a $1,200 per patient day efficiency change, and that is due to staff Truven changes. Truven, we initiated, we paid for a study for benchmarking, and we were able to get closer to benchmarks on all of our different services. So anyway, giving you a little bit of a background because I wanted you to understand I'm not throwing things out that are perhaps not discernible. If you look at, well, you may not even have that, but the inpatient days, Medicare Advantage, just want to let you know, we are up at, in August, 125 patient days, Medicare Advantage. That's pretty hefty. I mean, that's like over four beds every day. So, and our self-pay has been pretty stable. That was the biggest change in the last 12 months, is Medicare Advantage going up and up and up and up. So last month, if you recall, we were at 182 patient days Medicare Advantage. So that accounts for our AR return rate for billing and being paid.
I'd like to mention too, if you look at the outpatient services, the very last thing, growth from 2018, 19, from 18 to 19, we've gone up on everything except, and still a little bit we did, endoscopy, but the MRI has gone up 14%, ultrasound's up to 41.9%. So those outpatient services are starting to be used. And if you know anybody that needs them, refer them here, because my UW doc, I called and said I want to go here instead of to the UW, and it was really easy.
And I just want to point out that I did some calculations here, and we are up 45% from last year in ER visits, if we were to, I'm sorry, from ER visits from 2014.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
So,
Whoa.
Yeah.
so that's what we were counting on. And I didn't realize we were up that much. So
Our
I
MRI,
thought, yeah,
is zero.
everything is up.
except for MRI procedures,
I did MRI.
0%. 2017, it's 217. It's
So the number stayed the same, 2000.
188, 135, 197, 217, and then it stayed constant 2018, 2019 at 153. Gave us a 0%, so it stayed kind of like.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to point out is when we first
Don't do a lot of-
got our machine, it wasn't too far below that, right? It was,
The MRI?
yeah, I think we
Pretty
had,
steady, it.
but
17.
I do recall that insurance was not paying for MRIs sometimes. They started going, do you really need an MRI? Do you really need it?
Yeah.
Or are we just
Yeah.
making money on our
So
MRI?
Right, about
And then
2
I-
years ago.
And I
Yeah.
think Commissioner Pollard was worried about that at one point. He was worried, are we just billing people for no reason? And so I think we've been a little more cautious and conservative in ordering an MRI right away on patients. So that's probably why we're a little bit, we haven't been up at all.
And the industry has really
As a whole,
clamped down as
yeah.
a whole, and so an MRI has to go through a prior auth process.
Right.
So you have to be able to demonstrate that you are making the correct testing selection based on what you're concerned about, and that you've done the other lesser expensive, lesser involved first.
That's good to know.
So that's what I recall. That was more of a regional concern. So, I think that's it. With any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
I guess we don't get the full picture like the finance committee.
No, you
That's
don't,
okay.
but if there's
But
something.
we can request it if you want.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'd be encouraged to, let me know if you have any questions.
All right.
Questions?
Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
Yeah, I don't remember that MRI discussion, but I do remember that Becker's Hospital Review, which is very well respected, had an article about 2 years ago that said that endoscopy costs, charges to patients are higher in critical access hospitals because of some, I don't know, anomaly or something in how it's billed. Do you know it, Dr. Whitcott, do you know it? Do you recall that?
I think probably what they were talking about is because at a critical access hospital, you charge facility fees as well as professional fees. And so that additive cost is often more. So you'll have to look at our policies, but we're pretty intentional about looking at the total cost of our facility fees plus our professional fees and making sure that the total, the sum total is consistent with what others in the area are charging.
Oh, okay, so we remain competitive.
Absolutely, because that's one of the areas where consumerism plays a role. And so MRIs, outpatient rehab, and endoscopy definitely. Patients
Thank
will
you.
call and ask what their out-of-pocket expenses will be.
Thank you.
And I just want to comment why we're doing good, we're doing pretty well right now, or based on several different things that just remind people that 340B funds coming in, Kroger signed up not too long ago. We're starting to see money. We're just starting to see money for sleep study that we, and the reference lab. So, and then rehab is doing really well right now. So those are all outpatient types of things that we're bringing in. And other than that, any other questions?
Anybody have any other questions for Commissioner Spiker? Then we'll move on. Medical Committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one last
Whoops.
thing. I make a motion at this time
Warrants.
to pay the warrants and all of the warrants that are on here, including payroll, bankroll, warrants, accounts payable, hospital and clinic payroll, taxes, and such, at $3,709,325.96. Remember, this is a 3 payroll 1 month, so.
You didn't say it quite right. It's $3,709,325.96.
Correct. Didn't I say that?
Didn't say million.
He did.
I don't think so. I heard him say.
I thought I said 3
Yes,
months.
he did.
You mumbled that.
Sorry.
We'll put him here.
No.
A second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Does it carry then?
It carries.
All right, I'm signing.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
Treasurer. All right.
Next on the agenda is Medical Committee.
Madam President, does Dr. Whitcup want to give her update now?
Yes,
Because we skipped it
absolutely.
originally, or do you want to come in at some other point on the agenda? Up to you. Or up to, let's put it to the body.
Start at the top. You have the floor.
Oh, all right. I will do my report to you all. This is probably there's no way to share it. So I did have a, sorry, I'm a little discombobulated.
That's all right.
So I have a thank you note to share with you from a family member. And so this family member's name is Connie Toole, and her husband, Bill. So she says, Snoqualmie Valley Hospital staff, Bill died on August 20th. He always remarked about the kindness, respect, and outstanding medical care he received at your hospital.
my thank you to you all, Connie Tool and family. Makes me cry. Very sweet. Yeah, very sweet. Share. It's nice to share those type of stories with you. We continue again in our ongoing priority for community engagement. So just a review of some of the things that we're doing this month. We are hosting a stop on the YMCA Halloween walk. So that's this coming Saturday. So that's with a lot of children and their parents. But they'll be stopping through our Ridge Clinic. So that's where the stop is. And so what we're handing them is a healthy after-school snack. So it's a gluten-free pumpkin brownie that they'll be getting, as well as the slap bracelets, again for safety with the Halloween season coming up, and information about all the other things that we provide. We also are providing a subject matter expert for the Snoqualmie Valley Community Networks event that's called In Plain Sight, and it's intended to draw attention to teen drug abuse. And so one of our nurses will be there to talk about what is the emergency room experience like for somebody who is having an adverse reaction, either withdrawal or an overdose there. And then, what's that?
2 different treatments.
2 different treatments, that's right. And then we're also hosting a learning booth at the Mount Si Harvest Festival. That is the last weekend of this month. And so again, aimed at families with young children. And again, focusing on healthy eating and healthy choices, or especially around the 3 holiday seasons that are coming up there. Our 2020 budgeting process is in full swing. As Steve and his team can attest to far more than all the rest of us can. But moving on, so we'll have that for you at the next time that we gather together. On September 24th, we did have the Washington House of Representatives Health and Wellness Committee come through. So it was on their rural hospital tour. So we had 13 legislators and we had 11 staff that were supporting them. So either their caucus staff, their House research staff, Department of Health, as well as Healthcare Authority. They were all here in the room. So thank you to Karen. She joined me in hosting them along with Rachel Weber. So a lot of great questions, had an opportunity to share with them. And I did this get in the packets? Okay, I will make sure that you will get this. So I shared this with the medical committee. This is just the summary that we gave them. And I apologize, I meant to get it in your packet today. It's just a summary that we gave them of us. So I'll make sure that you'll get a copy of it so that you've seen what they've seen.
I don't.
In the medical committee, we went over that.
Oh, we went over, but we didn't get
You can share, you can get that to
I
me.
didn't get a copy.
But I'll make sure that I'll just send it in an email out to you.
Talk about it.
Just a nice, it's a nice summary of us all. So we received quite a few questions from them. Some interesting conversation. They were exploring and understanding, thinking about the legislative session coming up.
Was this unannounced or they were invited or how was it? Did they meet?
No, we've known about it for
Oh,
quite
you
a
know.
bit. So so we introduced it at the last board meeting that it was coming up in September.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So now I'm just closing that loop, that it did occur. And then we talked earlier in our affiliation work study about the community health needs assessment that is currently in process and is anticipated to be ready late November, early December, that they'll have that for us. We did have a Department of Health survey of our CT, so shout out to Ron in the back. We had not a single deficiency, and then lavish praise throughout that experience. So that's not always our experience in DOH surveys, but nice to have. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ron. You make us all look good and we
Well,
appreciate it.
It's the staff, actually. I just work the room. They do the work.
Thank you.
It's a great team.
It's team effort.
Yeah, team effort. Great.
I don't know if you all have driven by I-90, Highway 18, but the work now has officially begun on the interchange. And so the very first part of that project is going to be a dedicated on-ramp for folks who are coming off of the parkway and getting onto I-90 westbound. So that where the old way station was,
Oh, yeah.
that's going to be,
Yeah,
and it's
it's
going to be
blocked,
commandeered. So that work is started now. So I don't know exactly what that means, if dirt's being turned or what have you, but it's started. So far, experience has been they have great communications. They've really made themselves available. They have a plan, process for us to to let them know things are going well, and they've assured us that protecting our access is important, that has a priority in there as well. And then Commissioner Spikers had sent out just a heads up about information out there about cyber attacks, especially in rural community access hospitals. So I thought it was a great opportunity
The
to reassure you.
The RISHA conference highlighted that. on the-
It's a near and present danger.
Very,
Absolutely.
very.
So just to assure you that we have several things in place always. So we have ongoing protections, so we have filters that are in place, we have education that's going on, as well as our regular monitoring that's occurring. And then every year we have a cybersecurity analyst that we bring in, usually in the month of December. And so they last December had a really deep dive into our security. And so we fared quite well. I mean, we walked away with some work plans to do, which is great. You would hate to pay some money and come away with nothing. But but really good. They actually made efforts to break into our
Did
system.
they do full testing, the two testing, what was the first, the internal and external testing? Yes. Yeah.
So that, yes, so thank you. I was in the process of just saying that.
Oh,
they-
See, we went to RISHA.
So we did. Good. So they made attempts to break into the system at multiple levels. So by telephone, by computer, in person, and they tried to physically get into the building. So they made it through the outer door and into materials. That's as far as they got.
Somebody said, what are you doing here?
Yep. So pretty proud of our team, but we can never let down our guard because that's a real thing, very real thing. In fact, a Washington hospital 3 or 4 years ago did lose they were held hostage. It was a huge expense. They're still in recovery from that.
And cyberspace experts is saying the industry that's the most attacked by cyber thieves are the hospitals. We're the number one.
So much of our things are connected to the computer, to the internet, So we're actually thoughtful about that as we're making selections. We made a decision not to make some selections of ID pumps that could come in and commandeer them.
Compromise.
On your agenda tonight, you guys may have already talked about this, is a reschedule of the November and the December work study meetings. And just thought I would just take the opportunity to say that it has to do with their proximity to the holidays. So we've offered a proposal that you all can talk through and decide upon. But November, we were thinking just pulling it forward one day, just to add a day's separation from Thanksgiving holiday. And then in December, there's a compromise. Commissioner Spikers, at least for one, is not available for our regular meeting schedule, and then the Christmas holiday later. And so just to find a time in the week that is in between the two and just compress them all together were the thoughts. So again, when you get to that point on the agenda, you can talk more about it. And then the last thing that I wanted to make sure to mention to you is you're going to receive an invitation soon to the holiday party. And this year, the holiday party is going to be at TPC, which is the new name of it is what the club at Snoqualmie Ridge. Yeah, thank you. I should ask you.
It's called the club.
So the organizing committee was able to get that nice venue, remain within budget, and then create a solution really that allowed our food service staff to participate in years past. They have not been participants because they've been serving us.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
so they've been able to do an excellent job of negotiating, so within budget, we get an entirely different experience.
What's the date, of the holiday party?
No, December 6th. Look to the calendar.
December 2nd?
6th.
They're fairly reasonable. Very good service without having to nickel and dime us.
The team drove a hard bargain.
They
drove a hard bargain.
Give us a good one. That's good.
So sorry I wasn't here earlier, just to thank you for letting me do it later.
That's all right. It's not, we're in a hospital. And you are a doc. That's reasonable to let you go. Okay, so next we have Facilities Committee, and I don't even know if I've even looked
Medical
at it.
first.
Medical, yes, medical.
You want me to do it again?
Gives me time, yes.
Okay.
Come on,
I can do physics.
All right, I'll jump over the ones that are repeats. Dr. Whitcup has covered
Sorry.
a lot of this. No, it's good stuff. So community health needs, we are in progress. It is flu immunization time, and we are doing our outreach to make sure everyone gets their vaccination. The Halloween event on the Ridge, we discussed, we're handing out reflective bracelets and pumpkin-based snacks. We will not be making the kids get shots, which was my suggestion. I'm just kidding. We've got this, the booth at the Sideview Harvest Festival. And this one we did not talk about yet. Two Rivers High School has the students do internships, and we are offering up to healthcare internships to those kids. And also hockey excitement. We've started talking to them about being kind of the facility where the hockey rink sends people for help. Perhaps we'll even get our logo there on the boards. I think that'd be pretty cool. All right, next up, flu immunization for the full staff started at the beginning of the month, and everyone needs to have their shots by the end of next month. Budgeting process is in full swing. We're going to talk about that one next month, right? We went over the Leapfrog results, and those are patient online surveys. I remember the results, but I don't remember where the data comes from.
Leapfrog is an organization who does quality assessment
Right.
for patient safety, and
Yeah.
so those are online.
And is it the,
And then
it's not the patient submitted data.
that was the next thing.
That was the next one, was the patient submitted data. Okay, so we reviewed both. Our average daily census, the 2019 budget was 22.8. In September, we had 22.2, and our September year-to-date was 22.8. Today's census is 23. Emergency volumes, budgeted 10.8. This month, 9.9 visits per day, and the year-to-date is now 11.1. Next week, I guess, we're going to be hosting the high-risk safe deliveries event, which is underwritten by Physicians Insurance, but we're going to be doing it here on our site. A court evaluator is needed for involuntary psychiatric holds in ED. A new social worker will help bridge that gap until a contract can be completed with a local group of therapists that specialize in this. And ED social work, we have, or we're getting a new hire? Have a new hire to cover ED on call for crises. What is SB? It's the next one down for merged. Swing it, sorry, all right, I'm learning my shorthand. The merged departments into one under a single manager opportunity created by the departure of a manager. That's for swing bed, social work, and you are?
Utilization.
Thank you. Pharmacy, this was great. So we had pharmacy students come in and do a rotation. Do a rotation. We got to read the detailed, the number grades as well as the narrative, what the students had to say. All the comments were excellent. It was really fantastic. Great job. For infection prevention, we're trialing washable keyboards. Trialing now in a second department. We're doing fit testing, which is to make sure that your face mask actually fits correctly, because we had higher than usual failure rates for fit. And then a Delta safe table for CAUTI reduction is being hosted by WISHA, and we will be represented by infection prevention RN, med-surg manager, director of nurses education, and CNA champion. Also, representatives from our endo department are being sponsored by a vendor to attend a local meeting for infection prevention. The DOH survey of the lab back in August, we submitted our plan of corrections that has been accepted by DOH. Next in clinics, we've got our new sleep physician, and the occupational medicine service line is in development for an anticipated launch early next year, which will provide work-related services to local businesses, things like drug screening,
drug testing, event-related drug testing rather, injuries, ergonomic, health fairs, musicians. Value-based contract incentive payments were received again this quarter for exceeding quality measures. That should have been in your report. That's awesome. Then we've got some initial privileging to provisional status for a teleradiologist and a teleneurologist. Med staff continued. The medical staff annual dinner is November 12th, and 2020 officer nominations are submitted for vote prior to November 12th. Also, already discussed by the doctor was the visit by the state representatives. And then our next meeting is going to be a adjusted date, November 4th, 4 to 5, upstairs. That's it for medical.
Are there
Any questions? Dr. Whitcomb will answer them. All right.
No, I have a question. If anyone else does, please go ahead.
No, you have the floor, Commissioner Pollard.
Okay, I just want to say that I've seen some recent documentaries on fentanyl-laced drugs, and it's very scary. These are street drugs, these blues, they call them, and so on. I don't know whether there's anything we can do. It's a national problem, but it's really scary.
It's a local problem too. I think 2 students perished recently.
That's right.
1 district over. So.
Okay, well, anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But with respect to the nice letter we got, I was wondering, do you also report to us any complaint letters? Because I've noticed online, I've seen some complaints about the hospital, and Tom Parker's attitude, as I recall, I want to be fair to him, he's not here, but he said, well, you can't please everybody. But other hospitals and organizations actually respond to complaints. And I just want to know if we are looking for an opportunity to do that when there are complaints on the internet about the hospital. It would be good to respond, at least express some empathy and care.
Yes, it is.
So our policy is very similar to almost all other hospitals. In fact, there was just an email conversation from multiple hospitals just checking in and making sure we all are operating the same way. And that is, we do respond to any complaints that we receive. So if we receive a complaint face-to-face or by phone, we try and resolve that immediately, just in the moment. We try and resolve it. If we receive it by letter, then we respond to it in letter. So we do always try and do a follow-up response, and again, try to achieve satisfaction. Complaints that are voiced in social media are actually very difficult to win at. So the better solution is if somebody else in the community can come to your defense. That is much more effective than you going face-to-face at it, other than if you're just going to do a correction. So there's a lot of different advice out there of what to do when somebody does something in a very public way. And so we try and always take the high road, not try and get into a public battle. And if somebody identifies themselves, then it's an opportunity to pull them off to the side and do a private conversation as opposed to doing it publicly.
Well, I've just noted that there have been some very positive and complimentary letters that have been brought to the board meetings and read. And I just wondered if we're receiving a balance there. I'd like to know what kind of complaints are we getting and so on. If we only hear one side of it, that may not be good.
I think too, as a board, we need to recognize that there's a drug issue that surrounds us.
Well, I'm not speaking only about drugs.
I know, but when you have people that are desperate, when they have an addiction and they can't have that addiction that fix, they're going to do and write and say whatever they can to a hospital. They'll be uncooperative, and it makes it really difficult because even if you want to help them, you have a difficult time doing it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we underestimate the power that some of the drugs, and there's more drugs coming out, there's not less. The vaping is one that's causing some issues. So I think I don't think our staff, from what I've seen of them, and I've been in the ER, they tend to be pretty responsive and supportive, but there's some that become repeat users and you can't.
Yeah.
It's a hard, difficult issue. That's all I can say.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say to you, we don't receive any complaints letters, because they do. So it'd be, and so I don't mind at all, the next time we're together in maybe in a work study, I can just bring you in a sampling of some of the things that we get complaints and pair them against some of the positives. I don't mind.
Well, you
But
know,
first, I'd
it
probably
would be
more
nice
appropriate.
if part of
Yeah.
your report each month, if there's a notable letter of complaint as well as a notable letter of compliment. It'd be nice for the board to kind of get a balance there, you know, someday.
Maybe compliance or quality is an appropriate place to put that too.
Okay. Now, on the flu shots, I was down at my doctor's office in Virginia Mason, and they said, why don't you, are you ready for your flu shot? I said, I didn't think they were going to be available until the 6th of November. And he said, well, as long as you're here, we'll give it to you. So they gave me a senior flu shot that's a stronger flu shot than the normal flu shot. And the next day I became sick. So I don't know. But I guess what my question is, what does a flu shot cost at our hospital? Can somebody give me a ballpark?
For somebody who's cash pay, if
Yeah.
somebody was paying cash,
Yeah.
$32.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're free at QFC and Walgreens.
No, but they're charging their
free
insurance.
everywhere else.
Pardon?
I can't think of any patient that actually pays us cash, because all insurance covers it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just want to make sure that if there are people that can't afford our price and don't have insurance, that we tell them it's free over at Walgreens and QFC, for example. There may be other places.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, just as long as they get the shot. Yeah, by the way, I got a letter from a lady that she wanted to know my position on mandatory flu shots. And she sent it to me as a candidate. You probably got one. I have not responded. I mean, I'm not sure there'd be anything to be gained from responding. But it's the issue of herd immunity. With respect to the staff at the hospital, is everyone required to get a flu shot?
That's what, in the medical committee report that Jen just read, we are a mandatory facility.
Oh, we call ourselves, I didn't catch that part of your report, thank you. Okay,
I didn't get a letter, what did it say?
well, no, I think it was only sent to
Oh, okay.
candidates.
Yeah.
And basically what it wanted me to take a position against mandatory
I got the same letter.
vaccinations and immunizations. And I didn't respond. And, because I very much believe in mandatory. Like, yeah, you know, they can come up with all kinds of horror stories about people being injured by taking these vaccinations. And I just don't buy them. Maybe you need to educate me if the contrary is true.
No,
Why is
please
it that,
continue to preach, thank you.
why is it that some people do get sick after they get the flu shot? Why is that? Is it,
It's working.
that means the vaccine is
It's
working?
working.
And others don't get sick?
Right.
Then
But
it
it's
doesn't
still
work
working,
then.
but it's still working.
So those are all my questions, and a nice report from the medical committee.
Anybody else? Okay, then next comes facilities, and I guess that's me. Old business was updating certificate of occupancy, which I believe has happened. Is that correct? No? Still in process.
It's a long process.
We never got it in the beginning. We haven't got it finished, and I'm not sure why. And I know that Scott is working on it. Day room temperature, this has been moved as a quality QI project. Several possible solutions have been discussed. To name a few, film on the windows, wall-mounted heaters, fake fireplace with a heater, and adding HVAC vents. There was a suggestion to have PSE do a efficiency check, which they are due for free, and I don't know if he's done that yet or not. Making the hospital a community gathering place, we have Encompass Leadership Team meeting on October 3rd, which already happened. CarePoint Clinic monthly leadership team meeting on the second Tuesday, Snoqualmie Rotary on the third Thursday, and the Daisy Girl Scout Troop 46802 is monthly. New business, clearing of the East Campus. They've changed the landscaping companies to care for the grounds of the hospital on the East Campus. There have been some positive improvements on the East Campus, and there's no difference in the cost for the services than there was already had been paid. And Scott was really excited about this. He was happy with the difference. And if you don't know, Scott is our facilities fellow. Nice guy. A new format and topics were proposed for future agendas as better informational sources for reporting to commissioners. The list of categories below will report on when there are relevant items to inform commissioners of any given month. So emergency management, fire safety management, hazardous materials waste management, medical equipment management, physical plant, safe patient handling, safety management, security management, utilities management. It was the consensus of the committee to adopt a new format for future facilities committee meetings. And I don't know if I heard that one side. Next meeting will be October 21st, 2019 at 8:30 in the morning at East West Conference Room.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is that backhoe digging on our property over
I
on
don't think
the
so,
Parkway?
no.
It's on the A parcel.
And what's that for? What are they doing?
Looking for the water lines?
Don't they have one of those things that you water with?
Which is distinct?
Locator.
We think that it was launched out of the work that's being done on our side for the as-bills and, you know, the complete occupancy, and that they came to realize that they don't know where the water line runs, and so they're over there working on finding that, and that's the answer we were given. It looks like a whole lot of work to find the water line.
I have a question also.
Yes.
How does a local group get to secure one of the rooms? I wonder if the local Boy Scouts might benefit from this.
Yeah, they do. Actually, the
Yeah.
Girl Scouts and
Girl
Boys
Scouts
What
do
are
the
they
Daisy
called?
Girls?
Yeah.
You call Val.
Noted.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so. We don't have a big meeting or your children too.
We come gatherings.
Okay, that's it right there, which is next. Okay, next we're moving on. Are there any other questions for facilities? Hearing none, we're going to move on to some old business, which is reviewing the board self-assessment summary. Everybody should have one in their packets, I think.
Yeah. Right here.
Okay, you want to take this on, Skip?
Sure.
Unbiased
We're gonna-
individual.
Yeah, I know.
Has everybody found their packet?
One for
Nope.
David.
No, don't have one in mind.
I bet you're there.
I bet I
It's
know.
more of a blue colored.
Yeah, I know what it is. I don't know.
There you go.
All right, thanks.
S and initials.
Okay.
So, Madam President
Yes, sir.
has asked me to serve more as a moderator, if I might. And in doing so, I'm not going to go through this board self-assessment, but I'm going to query you as to comments, questions, suggestions, things that you have either a visceral reaction to or maybe an inquisitive thought about a topic here, either because of the results or because of the type of question. And as you know, it was broken into sections and then overall suggestions for improved board performance. So with that, I think there was 6 sections, and I'll just start with section 1, which dealt with your vision, mission, and strategic planning oversight, which in some cases can be the most nebulous, because how do you define a vision? But in the other, it's the most documented because you can show whether you have one or don't have one. So your comments, and I'll just, go down the line, if you will, as to any comments that you'd like to engage the rest of the board in terms of section 1 about your vision, mission, and strategic plan. As you can see in the 3 comments or 3 questions, they were either all agree or strongly agree that you appear to be focusing on and having the opportunity to provide advice. So Commissioner Pollard, any comments, questions, queries about section 1?
No, thank you. I'm not going to make a comment. I notified the board, I guess it was in
I believe he let me know he was not going to participate.
did I notify you?
Well, I think
That I want to wait until the budget process has gone forth. That's so important. It was not handled properly last year. And the election is over, so this can't be misused for election purposes. And I said before the end of the year, I will submit comments and responses.
Understood. I guess my query was not specifically for you to respond, but more if you had any comments about the overall summary, because we're just addressing the summary. So I'll come back and ask you if you do have a comment as to what was summarized here, though. So, Commissioner Carter.
No comments.
All right, Commissioner Spikers, you're making my job very easy.
No, it's not
Commissioner
far from what I...
Vice President Herron.
Talking about the first one, our board is actively engaged in shaping the mission, vision, and strategies of SVH, correct? We got 1, strongly agree, 3. I think I agree.
Okay. President Norris.
I think I'm one of the agree.
Yeah, I probably was too. I think we're actively engaged for the most part. I think people take the time to be engaged.
Well, then we'll move on to section 2 of 6, and this is the quality and safety of your care oversight. And as you can see, section 2, which starts on page 2, these are not page numbers, but section 2.
Quality and safety.
Yeah, it dealt with the quality and the safety, and you can see that there was a strongly agree that you're updated, there was a strongly agree that the board delegates the oversight to the committee, and a agree or strongly agree on setting aside sufficient time. And as you can see, the comments are consistent with those. So any comments, questions, or further queries about that? Commissioner Pollard?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Carter?
Bravo, Dr. Whitcock, because I feel like you really set the culture for safety and quality here. Thank you for championing that, because it's super important.
Commissioner Spikers? Secretary Spikers?
No, I would agree with these results.
Vice President Herron?
Same here. I think that Dr. Whitcup does an awesome job in updating us on all this and all that dashboard that she puts together. That's very helpful. Thank you.
President Norris?
Well, we have 4, 4, and 3. I think we're all pretty supportive and appreciative of what we get.
The numbers speak loudly.
They do.
Section 3 on your next page, which would again be page 3.
So you're just picking up.
This deals with the financial management oversight, and there are 2 questions that were dealt with there. And there are 3 strongly agrees on the board appropriately delegating, and then setting aside sufficient time, there was 3 agrees. Commissioner Pollard?
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Carter?
I feel like we have a big risk because in the absence of Steve or Commissioner Spikers, I feel that we would not have the expertise needed to drive the financial vote, and putting all that in someone that's departing and one other individual, I feel is risky.
So you're encouraging them never to drive in the same car together?
Yeah,
They have to go in separate cars? We can only lose one at a time. Well, there is, in every organization, what they call, and all the hospital districts, there's the institutional memory, there's the historical database that those individuals have. And they always talk about that, is what if we were to lose this CFO or that COO? And you clearly have that experience here, and you've identified a legitimate concern.
Yeah, rarely do we
ever say, yeah, what if we were to lose our attorney?
No, that's never brought up. That doesn't seem like that's a concern for most organizations. I think they're replaceable. Secretary Spikers.
Well, I think we used to spend a lot more time on the finance part of our meetings back 3 to 5 years ago. I know I spent 15 minutes talking to the board to make sure that the board understood. Now I'm just assuming that they all understand a lot. I try to simplify things, but I would agree, maybe we should delegate more time, to it, but.
So your comment that you used to spend 15 more minutes, was that a good thing or
At
not
the
so
time,
good thing?
it was really, really necessary, because we were, undertaking $100 million.
Building to be done.
Yeah, we were going to end up in the hole at $100 million only, and it was really important for people to understand what was going on, to be able to to have that foresight to be able to know that we can pay this up, we can do what is right, but I
Do you
hope-
feel like, as the chair of that committee, the finance committee, and as the secretary, you're getting enough feedback from your other board members as to the level of amount of detail you're giving them? Are you getting the feedback that you need?
Well, I would hope that I would get more. I really do, because the more you understand how things tick, the less you'll need me or Steve.
There you go.
So, that I would encourage you, Rubina, try to send me an email. I'll sit down with you if you need to, or talk to you over the phone. I'd be more than happy to. So, anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you. Vice President Aaron.
Yeah, I think the actions, the oversight of the Finance Committee has been very helpful in terms of relating the narrative to our understanding, but yes, we do need more work and really understanding how bond works and when that is going to be callable. I think that's an area that, because there's so many years that is attached to it, and I'm trying
And
to
so many
remember.
different bonds.
And so many different, that's one of the things that I should be asking a lot more about, just trying to remember when those will become. So, yeah, we do, I applaud the Finance Committee. I applaud you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Spikers, for really bringing us to the forefront and making a big difference in our finances, because we were fairly new. I was fairly new at the time, and I know it was handled a little bit differently before, but thank you.
I just wanted to say that it's not me, it's the staff
Yeah, the staff.
that
and our
does
finance
the work.
committee, and-
I just report and understand what's going on and try to relate the
But you
information.
are the eyes and ears. So.
Yes, and I do
Thank you
push
for your-
people.
Yeah. Thank
Not
you.
Steve.
So two comments. One is, when I get to the end, I'm going to ask you for next steps. And it sounds like one of those next steps might be educating the board more, taking them to another level
Another
of
level.
understanding that budget.
Exactly.
And there's the old adage that information becomes knowledge and knowledge becomes power. And you're not right at that level where one of you could probably step in and give the budget report yet, but I think you will be. President Norris.
I sit on that same committee with David, and I think for us, working with staff, particularly with Steve, is a whole lot different than it was when I first came on. It was, you didn't get good information, you were looking at a checkbook register, and we didn't get the big picture. And David has been very bold in asking those questions. Sometimes you don't know the questions to ask, and I've appreciated him. And I think too, because we're both small business owners, we can kind of understand AR, accounts receivable, that gets to be a big deal. And, but when you start talking about the bonds and the tax dollars, that kind of stuff, then it gets a lot more
So
complicated.
is this progression been an evolution or a revolution?
For me, probably a little bit of both, but mostly
Okay.
evolution. I mean, we run a business, so I know about our business finances, which are different, and liabilities and things like that, and lawsuits if you don't do things right. So, but I really appreciate, he out of all the board, before and now, he's probably the one that understands it the best, other than staff.
So I'll move on to section 4 now, which is the middle of page 3, and that's the executive oversight, and it has 3 questions that you responded to. And this one is the board annually evaluates the CEO, and you can note there was 3 disagrees and only 1 agreed. And then the board periodically obtains compensation incentive arrangements. That one was really disparate. 1 strongly agreed, 2 agreed, and 1 disagreed. The third question dealt with the collaboration of the CEO, at least annually, on leadership development, and that was a 2 agree and 1 disagree. And then some comments concerning about the organizational oversight there in terms of the executive. Commissioner Pollard?
Okay.
Thank you. And Commissioner Carter?
No comments.
Commissioner Spikers?
We need some work in this area.
Work to do. Commissioner Herron?
Yeah, it's an area that really do need. I agree with Commissioner Spikers.
President Norris?
Yes, I have a real issue with, we don't help our executive staff, we do not do evaluations like we should. And then if they do something wrong, we all have a little hissy fit. And I think that we really need to empower them and give them this feedback, positive and negative, so that they can better meet our needs. And I may have been one of the ones that was down at the disagree, because I don't think if we don't evaluate them or evaluate ourselves, we're not doing the best we can do for either them or for us. And so I just, yeah, I think we need to do a much better job.
Thank you. Section 5, we're now over on to page 4 at the bottom, deals with board effectiveness, and it talks about the information that you receive and reading materials and preparing and addressing community issues. And those appear to be mostly agrees and some strongly agrees until you get to the board chair providing effectiveness, and that is a strongly agree, and 1 disagree, and then the board actively developing, encouraging community members to serve. Any comments on that? Commissioner Pollard?
All right.
Thank you. Commissioner Carter?
No comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Secretary Spikers?
No? No comment.
Commissioner Herron? And Vice President Herron?
No comment.
And President Norris?
No comment.
We'll move on to personal effectiveness then. This one is on page 5 and goes over on to page 6. Those are 8 questions, and those 8 questions deal from everything from being prepared personally, being able to voice your agreement or disagreement, being able to spend time and considering your attendance, how effective you are, honoring your commitments, and they all appear to be in the strongly agree or agree. In fact, most of them are all strongly agree that you feel prepared, that you are in attendance, you are in the moment, and you're honoring your commitments. Commissioner Pollard?
Pass.
Thank you. Commissioner Carter?
No comments.
Commissioner Secretary Spikers?
I would agree with the result of this.
And Vice President Herron?
Well, on section 6, item 4, I agree, however, we do need sometimes, we need more time to spend on board meetings, providing background on significant issues so that I feel sufficiently educated and able to make informed decisions. I did agree on that, but that's my comment.
Thank you. And President Norris?
I'm reading it again. You know, I guess I was somewhat ambivalent about it, even though I must have been 1 or 3. And I guess I sometimes feel like we're just not all prepared when we get here, even though we get the information ahead of time and stuff. And I think that inhibits us as a board sometimes.
Thank you. So before we talk about next steps, there was the opportunity to provide additional comments, which many of you did, of course, and put those. Are there any there that you'd like to call out or discuss or reference? Commissioner Pollard? Thank you. Commissioner Carter?
No.
Secretary Spikers?
No.
Vice President Herron?
I understand that the board has its hands off when it comes to operations. However, I think discussions about, if the CEO is hiring a new person, my hope is that the board is aware of it and not at the last minute, oh, by the way, I don't know whether the finance committee was aware of that when
Karen got hired.
when CEO was hired, were you aware of
I
it?
don't recall if we were or not. I don't.
So that's the communication need to be.
Except in this case, the CEO is a responsibility of the superintendent, and as long as she's acting as superintendent, or Dr. Whitcock is, then that's her job.
I understand, that's why, my premise was we are not in the operations, but my comment is to have that communication between the board or the finance committee, because you're looking at salary. Remember,
But the salary's already in there,
was
though.
was already?
Yes, because
That was already
Yes.
put in. Well, those are the things that, that's why I said part of
Yeah.
That's all right.
One of the
the
things
significant issues that we're talking about.
I was concerned about when Dr. Whitcup took over the CEO responsibilities, she also had 2 other jobs. And I was concerned about stretching her,
Time,
stretching her
mind,
time
everything.
between the 3. And I had put that up in the air a couple of times. And I said, so long as you can do all 3, I'm fine with it. But, I mean, if it comes to, push comes to shove, you gotta let us know, if you need an additional person. Because we have put in the budget an additional monies for an additional person. So I think right now our budget is a half a person less than what we have been budgeted.
Because I made that comment, because this comment came from another board commissioner, and that was you, and you had mentioned it to me,
Well,
and so
I
I
didn't-
wasn't sure what is happening. So I'm being
I think-
transparent here.
I think I didn't have a problem financially
Yeah,
with it.
okay.
I had a problem that we just didn't know. It was a surprise that
Okay,
she
so
hired
that's-
someone,
yeah.
at least for me. So it probably would have been nice if she'd said, okay, I've hired someone, I went and introduced her. First time I met her, I didn't know. until-
Okay. That was just,
So before I talk about
Let's be
next steps then, I'll share with you just 3 short paragraphs that I wrote to another board, because they were going to do a self-assessment, and they didn't think they should, didn't know how to do it, and hadn't done one for a long time. So some of you know I like to write, and sometimes Dr. Wick probably hates to read what I write. It's way too lengthy, but I get carried away. So I did some research, and I found an article from the Minnesota Hospital and Healthcare Partnership about self-evaluations, and here's what they wrote. A self-evaluation provides some clear language, such as noting that a board's self-assessment is much like a physical examination. They note you may feel fine and believe your health is perfect, but your knowledgeable and trusted physician will tell you that an occasional examination of your health and well-being is an important ingredient in ensuring your personal long-term viability and productivity. So as we as discussed, and I go on to tell them that you should undertake this. Another article says many boards don't conduct self-assessments because they don't know how, or because they see the assessment as an empty, meaningless exercise. Individuals engaged in training and conducting these assessments offer the following advice. Make the assessment anonymous, make it measurable and reportable. Use it to identify issues, and don't stop with the evaluation. That's what most people do. The most important step in transforming the information gathered through self-assessment into knowledge that results in a focused leadership action plan from the board. And finally, a comment I believe is worth considering is that whatever you do well at the board level cascades throughout your organization. Self-assessment, when done right, can have profound implications throughout your entire organization. So that was just 3 of the concluding paragraphs that I provided for that board. So I think that's where you're at now. You've done that assessment. You've got some data. You've got some information. Now it's critical, what are you going to do with it? Because otherwise, then it was nothing more than an activity that produced it was an accomplishment
to create an activity. So now you have to move from the activity to create a goal and achieve that goal. I picked up 3 next steps potentially. One is increasing knowledge about the budget and a less reliance, if that's the appropriate term, on your CFO and your finance chairman. The second was that you need to have more evaluation of your leadership in your organization. You don't do regular evaluations, you don't provide ongoing feedback. And the third was creating more board effectiveness, being more effective as a board. So those are the 3 that I picked up in our discussion, and then you may want to take the next step, and the next step is, what are you going to do about that? And so you can put that on a future agenda item or put it on a discussion, or discuss it now, but I think I've taken up as a moderator way too much of your time this evening, and I apologize. And Commissioner Pollard, I'm not getting paid by the word, but I do want to make sure that I don't capture too much of your time. So Madam President, I hope I've met your desires in terms of moderating this tonight and identifying those 3 areas of concern that you'll probably want to take next steps. Otherwise, this was a wasted activity, and the prophecy becomes self-fulfilling.
And hopefully, we as a group will decide what goals we want to set. We haven't had a retreat in a long time. That's something that we could do at a retreat, is decide how we want to look. When we start talking affiliation, that makes it a little more difficult because we don't know what things are going to look like. But those are some times when we probably, as a board, come together and see how we want to move in the future. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Okay. Then the assessment, new business. Reschedule November 27th, 2019 work study due to holiday. Proposed time with our date would be Tuesday, November 26th, 2019.
I probably won't be here on the 26th,
Okay.
but
I'm out of town.
November 26th. Schedule. That's a Tuesday. November 26th.
we had it originally set for
27.
27th.
Thursday,
Unless you're going to do it on the 20th.
20th is a Wednesday?
Yeah, I can do 20. Can you do 21? I can do 21.
I don't know if that's,
I have a book club.
that's 20th?
That's the 3rd Wednesday of each month, yes.
How about 21, just move it by a week?
The 21st. 21st, usually that week, so that's the 3rd Thursday.
Yeah, 3rd Thursday.
Will that work for you, Jenna?
November 21 is okay?
Yeah.
Pollard?
Yes,
Dean, does
yes,
that
I
work for
think
you?
it's a very good solution.
All right, December 21. November 21.
This is the work study.
Okay. All right, the next reschedule of all December board meetings due to holiday schedule conflicts. December 12th, affiliation work study and regular meeting, and December 25th, 2019 work study. Proposed date, Thursday, December 19, 2019. Start time at 3:30.
The start time of 3:30 was only just to add a little more time,
Mhm.
but the last time that we did this combination, the group decided to keep the
Okay.
regular 4:30 start
Okay.
time, so.
So we are now looking at
Think that's 3:30.
December 19th. That's the 3rd Thursday as well. 3:30?
Okay, wait,
I'm
it
sorry,
looks
I
like-
didn't hear that last.
It should be
3:30 or
regular.
4:30?
We have December 12th affiliation work study and regular meeting together on December, that's it, 25th. Yeah, so that's not going to work, so we're going to look at the 19th at 3:30.
Yeah, that's right.
Does that work?
That works.
Then Emma, you were asking about the 3:30, and we only added that thinking that we were putting 3 meetings together.
Oh,
Did we want the extra hour? That would be for this group to decide if you want to do that, or if you want to leave it at the usual 4:30 start time, which is what you decided
Yeah.
for
I think 4:30, and then I think we should be there.
I don't mind getting home an hour earlier, I think 3:30 is better, unless you guys all prefer, I can do either, if you prefer 4:30.
No, 3:30 is fine too. Yeah, I'm
It'll
okay.
already be dark.
I'm okay with that.
So what
As
have
long
we
as it doesn't
decided?
snow.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, yes or no?
It starts at 3:30.
Either one's fine.
3:30 on the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay,
We can go home early.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
cool.
about-
3:30 is
Thanks.
good.
Thanks for doing
On the
3:30.
19th,
So there's, it's just a work study, no,
including
All the
that,
above.
Yeah.
Affiliation, work study,
Affiliation.
and the board,
And board.
all of them.
on the 19th?
On the 19th.
Okay,
All three.
Yeah. We'll kill 3 birds in one stone.
okay. Fine.
Is that okay?
I'd rather start early. right?
Yeah,
Workshop.
3:30 is good. Yeah, go home
Start
early.
no meeting at 9.
That,
Well, trying to get it in our phones. I'm just gonna-
That's all that is on
Yeah.
everything's still the same.
I know, nobody else has it.
Everybody else got.
Same, other than the filtration.
I'm a dinosaur.
general-
the November 21 work study, what time does that start?
We're doing,
6:30.
That's exciting, thanks.
4:30, right?
4:30.
4:30?
No, she's back.
Yeah, the
in-
November
I'm back to
21st.
21st.
The 21st is 4:30.
Well,
The work study.
okay, I had it at 6:30.
Maybe we can get one of those nice new calendars.
You will.
So it's at 4:30 or 6:30?
4:30.
All right.
Early.
Let's rely on that.
okay, are we set to move forward on our agenda?
Regular work study is 4:30 or 6:30?
The new,
Because there's not affiliation, so it's
Okay, so
6:30, you're right.
it is 6:30.
That's the
what I thought.
21st November, not the,
Can you not do 4:30?
Yeah, the November is 6:30.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Well, that's
Because
fine.
that's the
Okay.
regular one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, are we ready? Has everybody got their cell phone set up? Next, number 3 on new business is CEO salary. And that would be Dr. Whitcomb. Do we have any kind of a, is that correct? Who did this? You and me? Yeah. Okay, and I don't know how we want to handle this, but we have not done a salary raise for her at all. We have not done our due diligence is what we haven't done.
Yeah,
So-
so the first thing we need to do, like we have learned from the governance education class,
Yeah.
is we need to look at comparison. Department of Health will have all of the hospital CEO salary. We need to do our homework first.
We do need to
Even
do some,
enter
but
into any of this.
I wanted it on the agenda so that
Comparison.
we know that we need to do it and how we can do it and where we're going to get.
It's been 1 year. She's been
Yes.
CEO, so it's time to. We did a whole thing on incentives and everything last year.
We
so
did.
Maybe we should take a look at
Yeah.
what we did instead of duplicating. Since we
So,
spent a lot of time.
so now, as I recall too, she came and brought stuff. So how are we going to get stuff? Do we go to get Val or somebody to help us, HR maybe, to see what we need to do?
Did we send it back to HR what we had, or did we, or what?
You were just prepared to go through the approval process or kind of work on what you wanted to accept from it, and that was the exact same time when Tom announced that he was departing. So
Yeah, so
we went
maybe we
back
should
and
look
looked
at what we've done to
So
that
we,
point, and then.
We have it, it
We
was
have
a
it.
company, it was a consultant group
Yeah, I
that you
remember
brought
that
in,
lady
and
that
so
came.
they did it.
Oh, for the,
we
Yeah,
had a
she came to
consultant.
give a,
Yeah,
yeah.
he-
for
that's-
incentives,
in it
yeah.
already.
For the incentive plan.
But I
And
guess the
then
first
we
thing,
refined what the consultant had. So, yeah, we spent a whole work study session on it,
Yes.
hour and a half.
I mean, you guys are
So you
fine,
can-
you
you
know,
can come
exactly
into
what
ways.
her salary, her salary is. Do you? So that's what we go from
I
there.
don't recall what it is, I know it's the highest salary, obviously,
Yeah, that's
because
what I
she's
heard,
CEO.
yeah. No, prior to even becoming a CEO, when she was the chief medical officer, that is still her salary to this day, isn't it? And it was higher than the CEO previously, correct? Am I not wrong? Oh, yeah, I'm
Chief
correct on that.
executive, yes.
Yeah,
Chief
she was a
medical
CMO, but her salary is higher than the CEO, which was Roger.
Well, too, she's now,
So that's why we don't know exactly,
She was the
comparison.
director and hospitalist at the same time.
she's
I think.
chief
Chief
medical
medical
officer
officer.
and superintendent right now. Both positions she's filling. And Karen does the chief executive officer, am I correct? No?
Operating.
Chief
Chief
medical-
operating officer.
Chief operating.
Operating, okay. I thought you were doing that at one time.
No,
That's the CFO.
I'm the
CFO.
CFO, I was just kind of pinch hitting until Karen.
Okay, so he was, that's what I
When,
thought.
when Tom Parker was the CEO and moved up to the CEO positions, he carried two positions
That's
too.
right.
And I don't know exactly how much race that was brought into that picture. I don't
Well,
remember.
we're
I was
now
new
out of
then,
date
so I
because
don't
it's
know.
1 year old.
Yeah, so- but he was holding two positions as well.
Okay, there's two things we need.
So we need to,
We need to look at salary, and we need to look at an evaluation. Everybody gets evaluated, including Dr. Woodcock. And it's not fair to her to not, say, attaboy, you're doing a great job for certain things, and maybe we'd like to see something else. I think she deserves that. Plus, she deserves the salary for the job she has.
Well, I think we should have evaluations and then also have that packet that we were given,
and look
or
into
we
that further.
talked to about, and talk about that at the next meeting. So,
Yeah, let's do our due diligence work first.
Okay,
mhm.
okay.
Before we make any.
Okay, so will we have access, do we go to HR? Steve?
I can coordinate that
Yeah.
and get that information and get it to you, if that's what you want.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a good place for us to start.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so we did that. Potential censor of a commissioner.
I asked to put this on the agenda, and I do this not easily. It concerns Commissioner Pollard, whom the last 2 years I've grown to actually respect. He's a lot of times spot on many things. But recently I received some information by way of our former CFO that was very troubling, and for a while I struggled with what I really wanted to have out of this. But there were many, many emails he had referenced or sent to the former CEO disparaging certain commissioners and staff. And I can quote maybe 10 or 15 of them. It's not easy to bring this up because I thought that Commissioner Pollard was sincerely really trying to do the best for the hospital district. And we were all doing really well as a board, as a whole. Nevertheless, and one of the things that he had mentioned is that he didn't want any of this information dispersed to any of the other commissioners. And being the person that has preached transparency for the past, since he's been at meetings, 10 years probably, it dawned on me I didn't understand why he would do these things and then not want to have it, and then try to keep things secret. And this is not what we're all about as a board. There were several emails, and it really does, we adhere to the rules of procedure we've adopted last December, and these rules adopted Robert's Rules of Order, specifically Chapter 15. A commissioner may be censured for the following: misconduct outside of board meetings. In this case, there were several emails to the former CEO. Disloyalty toward the organization, failing to vote to pay employees of the district on a continuing basis, violating rules that our organization holds dear. The one thing that I thought we really all agreed about is transparency, and him wanting to keep this information privileged, which is not viable as a public entity. Working against the organization, I could go on, I mean, I don't really want to get into things way back, what things at the time the board was in chaos, 5 to 10 years ago. I don't even want to get into that. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. But I am disappointed at my colleague. And I'm going to call him my colleague because I did respect him the last couple of years. I thought he was really doing a great service for our, some of the things he would quote. Transparency should be more than lip service. I believe I mentioned before we should strive for a new era of transparency and professional management. He basically quoted, quote, we were functioning as a board president without I was functioning as a board president without portfolio. He accused me of being an impossible person to work with. He has libeled, slandered, bullied, and abused me for years. He's accused me of being having a conflict of interest several times. Quote, he sometimes expresses himself through pressuring his marionettes on the board. He's wrongfully implied that I was a member of the Kiwanis and accused me of having a conflict of interest concerning the fireworks stand. At the time, I was not even a member of the Kiwanis, although I did support them financially. He accused me of, accused the board of being non-transparent by not having open finance meetings, even though there was a citizen advisor for these meetings several times, or for at least a year and a half or two when things were difficult. He continues to accuse us as a board for violating the OPMA for this reason, and unfortunately, 3 commissioners at a meeting does violate OPMA, so that's why we have 2. He's wrongfully accused me of hidden conflict of interest. That's a quote concerning fireworks sales, as I said. Accused me of playing head games with him over his email address, which bounced back. He said that had an attachment. He personified himself as a victim and accused me of blaming him for his own email errors. He accused the board of secretly discussing a consultant for possible affiliation, and accused the commissioners of rubber stamping, quote, like puppets, end quote. He accused me of threatening to sue him because I did not like what he was saying, and again described the board as a silent rubber stamp board. This is, quote, a silent rubber stamp board that rarely, if ever, acts. He's blamed me for wasting money on former CEO's severance. Yet, he walked out on a meeting that could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money. I'm not even going to get into that because it was about 5 years ago or more. Quote, David makes his own rules by hiding behind the skirts of Daryl Norris. That is disparaging. Spikers can get away with murder, end quote. I don't understand. He's accused, he's insinuated that I had a potential conflict of interest because I maintain a satellite office in Desert Air near Astria's headquarters. We were in negotiations, or we had an LOA with Astria at one point. I'm not sure what, because I have an office in Eastern Washington. He's accused Daryl and I of having a conflict of interest because I maintain a working relationship with Daryl's husband, Gary. Quote, until Spiker worked with her, she favored rejecting the Astria proposal. If you recall, Daryl and I were the first to reject this proposal. after a certain period of time. Quote, Spikers turns many people off as a type A personality. Norris is Spiker's echo. Spikers has long hidden behind Dariel's skirt to avoid accountability when manipulating her. These are all quotes. I will not meet with Skip Hauser. He's a lousy attorney like Spikers. I won't meet with Dariel Norris, David Spikers. Dariel and I should recuse themselves not only from RHY Astria, but also from any other affiliation negotiations because they have a conflict of interest. So these are things I just, like I said, it came to me and I was surprised by these quotes and these, I don't know why, because I really thought that Commissioner Pollard was really working hard to do what was best for this community, and to do something like that is just against the 4 items for censorship that I pointed out. All I'm asking for is an apology. That's all I'm asking for. And I'd like to see that today.
Can I make the comment, David?
Yeah.
In all of this stuff that I read, I have a hard time because you tell Tom what to do, the CEO, and that's not in our job description.
Sir, I think that we're violating decorum now when she's starting to address and accuse me.
Well, you say down here,
Wait a minute, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
David Spiker, the Secretary, asked for this to be placed on the agenda. He has identified what the agenda item is. But if you want further discussion, there should either be a motion, or you're just otherwise commenting, and this would be more appropriate under Commissioner comment then, but not in response to his statements.
Okay.
So you either need to move it along procedurally, as Commissioner Pollard has said, either with a motion or a second. Otherwise, you're just having a free-flowing discussion.
Is there any motion that you want to make, David?
You could make the motion, I'd second it if you want.
I guess I'm having a hard time because I really feel like I have some words to say.
Well, then that would occur in the debate under the motion and a discussion of the motion. But at this time, as Commissioner Pollard said, you're just responding or commenting on what he said. That would not be appropriate under your agenda item.
Did you make a motion, Dr. David? If you didn't, I will. Sense of.
Yeah, I'm making a motion at this time for censure to ask him to apologize to the board.
I'll second that.
Now it's been moved into second, and now you should inquire as to discussion and go through the typical process that you do, Madam President, when you have a motion on the floor.
Doesn't that go on, may I speak, under new business action items?
Yes.
It doesn't go under the new business, but there's a new business, then it says action items.
Yeah, that's where the action would take place.
So the discussion
That's where
and
the
then the
vote-
voting.
Yes, that's when the vote would take place. You could have discussion now.
Okay.
You could discuss the motion, but you cannot take a vote till you get to the
The
new
new
business.
business.
Correct. It's been moved and seconded. You can have discussion.
Parliamentary inquiry. What you have read to us tonight, is that the total sum and substance of your issue or complaint toward me?
At this time, yes.
Okay, well, I hereby request of the compliance officer under the Public Records Act to have a copy of what Mr. Spikers has read from tonight and any other documents or basis for his issue. I request that, and a verbal request under the PRA is as good as a written request. Okay, now, this is much less than what you said.
Actually more than what I said.
Well, if I can, Madam President, this is a public records request, and those must be complied with under the PRA.
Okay.
And so he has a 5-day period to respond specifically with when the materials will be available. So an oral request, as Commissioner Pollard has identified, is the same as a written request. It must be treated the same. So the compliance officer, who is also a public records officer here, must comply within 5 days to meet that or clarify the request. So you should not try to do that in a meeting and respond to a public records request, because he may not capture everything, he may not be able to produce everything. I think it's clear what Commissioner Pollard's request was, and let your public records officer respond to that and not try to do that in a meeting.
I think also I have, the inherent right to respond, but unless I have the full record, I can't respond.
I understand, that would be your comment to the chair.
To the chair.
Madam President, you have identified, and she's going to go through and I'll allow you to all discuss and debate. Your response would be to either respond further later or something along that line, Commissioner Pollard. I'm not going to respond to you because that should be done by the President. But Madam President, you should inquire of the other members now to speak as to the motion that's been seconded. So everybody has the opportunity to speak to that motion.
Do I have an opportunity?
Of course you do, absolutely.
I was appalled when I got all this. I was really upset. I was upset about things you said about me, about the things you said about David and myself.
Wait, point of order. She's
Do you want me
upset
to read
about
it?
what has been written here, but she has not personally experienced what she's now describing.
Oh, you want me to read it? And I'll.
No,
Madam
how
President.
do we know that this is valid until we see it in
Commissioner
writing?
Pollard, this is not a deposition, it's not a cross-examination. She is allowed to speak to the motion, and she can speak to that motion. That's what she's speaking to.
Point of order.
Yes.
This does not comport with Robert's Rules of Order in terms of decorum. This should have been taken care of in executive session. I'm amazed.
Okay, I'll respond to your point of order.
Point of
I
order.
have conferred with other parliamentarians to include the parliamentarian you previously used here. And a censure motion, it can be addressed, and it does not abide by specific decorum, because when there's a censure motion, they are allowed to speak directly about what was said. And so they can go forward with this. This is not violating Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, the question that I have is, unless somebody has hacked my computer, where did this stuff come from?
You sent that stuff to Tom Parker, and it's public record. All these are things you wrote to Tom Parker about other board members.
So this was sent to Tom Parker with the expectation of confidentiality.
Yeah, it was.
And now he's spread that around to you folks.
He gave it to me.
Uh-huh.
He gave it to me, and
What did he give it to you? At what? I think the timing. I'm here, I'm looking at the timing here.
prior to
It's
his
the
leaving.
timing that I'm looking at.
Prior.
Because this is election year.
Okay, again, Madam President, you need to take specific steps. Speak to the motion, allow each member to speak to the motion and move forward.
How do I do that and answer the questions at the same time?
Well, and that's, Commissioner Pollard's inappropriate by asking questions, and I'll try to assist the board in that process. But you should speak and then allow each commissioner to speak to the motion. And I think, further you can identify that this information was requested and provided to you from CEO Parker, and it was provided to Secretary Spikers, either through a public records request or from CEO Parker. So I think that does answer Commissioner Pollard's question, but again, you must move forward with the motion that's before the body.
I think it's only fair that I get a copy of the request that I've made of the compliance officer and allow me to address those comments.
So that's the comment to the chair from Commissioner Pollard as to this motion. He believes that he should be given the greater opportunity to respond after reviewing the documents. So,
I'll give you the documents if you want them.
Madam President, we've already addressed that. That's going to come from your public records officer, and he's going to respond accordingly under the rules. So do you want to inquire further from individuals speaking as to the motion now?
Does anybody have anything to offer?
Wondering when you received these emails?
I received them when I made a public record of it. That's when
When?
I probably had it, I don't know, probably 6 months ago. Before, actually, shortly after, just before Tom Parker left. I got them just before he left.
Why bring them up right now?
That was my question.
I don't know.
Okay. Why bring them up right now?
It took me a while to figure out, I've only had these emails for a few months at most.
And they've been bothering me the whole time.
Been bothering me too.
The things he has said about people, the comments, the things that just are not true, he makes assumptions, and they attack me personally. And I don't like that, and I don't think any other board member would.
I object to that kind of language.
I don't think
In a motion for censure, you can speak directly as to how it impacts and how the other member
Well-
does, and that is appropriate under Robert's rules.
There's a motion on the floor. Has it been seconded?
Yes, it was seconded.
All right,
It was
I
moved by-
call for the question. This is ridiculous. I call for the question.
I
Go ahead and
understand
vote.
calling for the question is a motion to close debate.
No,
And you must now vote. You can't discuss a call for the question because that's asking the previous question, meaning it's to close debate. So you must first then move that motion. The question's been called. It's a motion to close debate. You need to then take a vote as to whether or not debate should be closed. Commissioner Pollard has asked that. He has a right to do that.
all those in favor of closing debate?
I prefer not to
Aye.
close the debate.
But you're all speaking at once, so I don't know how you voted, so
She said she was not. He said he did. I'm not ready. I don't know about David, and I don't know about Jim.
I've said what I needed to say.
So are you in favor of the motion or not? The motion is to close debate.
I'm, well,
You
I'm
voted no?
first,
No,
I'm
why
not
do
in
you-
favor to close the debate. I want to make a comment.
No, you can't make a comment.
Oh,
This
I'm
is a
sorry.
non-debatable
Okay, never mind.
motion.
Okay.
This is either to close debate or not. And so
No.
the president is going to take,
I
again,
said nay.
Commissioner Pollard has voted in favor of the motion to close debate. Commissioner Carter,
No.
she has voted no to close debate. Commissioner Spikers,
No.
he has voted no. Commissioner Herron,
No.
you have voted no. And the motion therefore fails, meaning the debate is not going to be closed. He asked debate to be closed, it's not. You can continue debate. Madam President, you now can inquire of your commissioners any further comments as to the motion.
I have a comment, Madam President.
I'm not acknowledging it yet.
Oh, I don't get acknowledged.
Who else has a
I-
comment?
I'm the only one making a motion.
You've heard already, have had the opportunity. She's going to inquire of other commissioners first, and then Mr. Pollard, I'll make sure that she does come back to you, Commissioner.
I have a comment. One of the reasons that I don't want to close the debate, first, I'd like to, I know it might be difficult to do it this evening, but I'd like to hear from Mr. Pollard and then know more about his response. There may be some validity to a lot of this based on some of my experience as well, but we have to give him the due process to respond to these things. And because there's a lot of timing issues that I'm kind of disturbed around that particular. And there's a censorship already in the first place, and this is the second censure. And we need to go further than just, we need to do more due diligence on this particular process.
So, Madam President, if there's any other commissioners that want to be heard, remember that Commissioner Pollard does want to be heard.
Did you have
Maybe even an apology, I'm sorry, because that's what Commissioner Spikers was asking. All he needed was an apology for all this, and that might close the topic, the issue, I don't know.
That's all I want.
Commissioner Spikers, am I right?
Yep. If
Not
I
a-
may speak.
Yeah, and then I want to say something. Just because I'm president doesn't mean I don't get to
No,
talk.
no, you do get to call, so Madam Chairman, why don't you give your debate,
Let-
and then
let
we'll
David
come back
speak
to
first.
Commissioner Paul.
I'm asking just for an apology. I don't, as I said, this was very difficult for me to bring this up, especially at this time of the year. But I think it's necessary because we're going into some very serious discussions here, affiliation. We need to work as a board, and whatever's happened has happened. I'd rather go forward than backwards, and that's all I'm asking for is an apology.
President Norris, did you want to speak to this motion before you come back to Commissioner Paul?
Yeah, I do. I guess when you do something like this and other people's names are in it, and you continue to say negative things, some of them are lies, that you have to be accountable. And we are supposed to be a board. We're not single entities that go to the CEO, our chief executive officer, and tell them what we want and what we don't want, and even take up their time to read all this. That's not, we are a board. We are an entity together that has to work together. And everything in here is gossip, and it's not cohesive for a board. I'm hurt, I am angry. I don't like to see somebody say bad things about me, especially when they're not true. And I'm with David, I want an apology. I would really appreciate an apology. And a promise that he's not going to go back and do this kind of thing to anybody else.
Madam President, then Commissioner Pollard has a comment he wants to speak to the motion.
Well, it's just very strange. When I write to Tom Parker, and I'm sure many times I've told him this is confidential, and now this is being dumped on me 3 years after the fact. No one knows whether my attitude and perspectives have changed. We're talking about things dated 2016, 2017.
2018.
That's the latest.
Commissioner Pollard has the floor, Madam President.
2000, I don't see any 2018. Here's 2015, 4 years old. And for political purposes, I maintain, and I would submit, this is being dumped on me 1 month before the election.
Commissioner Pollard, you're out of order. You cannot discuss any political issues in this board meeting.
I'm only talking about,
You can speak to the motion. You
I'm
cannot-
speaking
you
to the
cannot-
motion. I'm saying the motive for the motion
You cannot
is
speak to
political.
motives as to political. This cannot be discussed in this meeting.
I accept.
Elections or political discussion cannot occur in this meeting.
Well, I'm not talking about voting for
You are
one candidate or
identifying the
another.
motive, and you are using this forum for that. That is improper according to the PDC.
Yeah, the PDC has said it's not proper to use a meeting for not just political purposes, but are you talking about 555?
Commissioner Pollard, I've given you the ruling that I believe that you cannot discuss.
555? Let's look at it.
I'm not going to look at anything, Commissioner Pollard. I just told you that you should not be discussing
All right,
politics
that's
or
fine.
campaigns.
But at any rate, it seems to me that I should be able to defend myself, not from these notes that have been extracted, that go back to 2015, but the basic material. If you received an email or documents from Tom Parker, I should have the right to see the basic document, not the notes that have been extracted from them. And so I'm asking under the Public Records Act to get all of the information that was drawn upon for this. And I think it's only fair that I be able to review that material before commenting. And maybe I will wish to apologize on an item or two or maybe more. But I should be able to, a person should be able to face the charges of someone charging. Not just this kind of note-taking and smear. You know, from the very first, no, I'm not going to get into that because I think.
May I say something?
I believe that everybody's spoken. If anybody else needs to speak to the motion, the president can go back and allow everybody to have another opportunity.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
Commissioner
You know-
Herrick, Secretary Spikers, Commissioner Carter,
No.
and Commissioner and President Norris, you would have the opportunity to speak, but then Mr. Pollard would have the opportunity to speak again as well.
That's fine. That's fine. What you are talking about is what you have done to other people in these letters. And these emails, you have said negative things, you have said condescending things, you've made assumptions that are not true, your own assumptions, based on some comment you heard somewhere else. You have, to me, I feel like you're damaging my reputation in the things that you've said here.
Commissioner Pollard would have the opportunity to speak since you.
Well, I find it remarkable as you consider this material damaging your reputation when you have made it now public. I wrote Tom Parker in confidence. I'm amazed that he would share whatever I wrote to him so that you could, 1 month before the election.
Now, again, I cannot allow you to discuss any elections
All
or
right.
all political matters.
All right, well, let's say at
Commissioner
this
Pollard.
time
I'll
of
also,
year-
Commissioner Pollard, please let me finish. I'll also identify that it was Commissioner Spikers that presented this information tonight. It was not President Norris.
Well, yes, all right. Well, at this time of year, let's just say that.
Commissioner Pollard, we know what you're trying to discuss.
Oh,
We
my
do not
gosh.
discuss any campaign or political measures.
Okay, well, at any rate, it just seems to me to, fundamental fairness would require that if you're going to make charges like this, David or whomever, or whoever supports it, that I should be able to see the underlying material. So let's just take one thing for example. It says,
Commissioner Pollard,
what?
They're
I'm
directly
responding to this point of order.
they're directly.
There's a point of order. Commissioner Pollard, what's your point of order?
My point of order is I should be able to respond without interruption.
Yes, and if we're going to invoke, and I know that the president's been lenient as to the amount of time, but typically there's 3 minutes to each, so you would want to be rather brief in your response.
Well,
I call for the vote.
Well, you can't call for the question. He does have the floor, Madam President. You should let him finish. Go ahead, Mr. Pollard, try and finish.
Well, I think all of us would agree transparency should be more than lip service. How is that something terrible? I don't understand. Now, it says here, accused me. I'm not sure the reference there. Is that accusing David Spikers, or is that accusing some other member of the board? That's why I need to see the documents on which these notes were extracted before I respond. It's only fair. That's fundamental fairness.
Thank you. And the Public Records Officer has identified, he's acknowledged this, and the process should be closed. Madam President, it appears that the debate may be nearing an end then. Is there any further discussion? Then you can call for your question.
I don't remember what my question was.
Well, the question is a motion, calling for the question to close the debate, and that it will allow Mr. Spiker's motion, which is moved and seconded, to censure Commissioner Pollard, and you would take a vote. You would just inquire, is the body ready for the question?
Is the body ready for the question?
No, I have a motion to table this until I
Does
receive.
the body have a?
I think that a motion to table
A
takes
motion to
precedence.
table does take precedent, and so then he would have a vote on a motion to table. He has moved to table. You must identify the length to table this, Mr. Pollard.
I would move to table this from a sense of fundamental fairness until I get the underlying documents and see.
Well, that would be a
which-
motion then to table it indefinitely,
No,
which
all
you
right.
could do, then it would have to be taken off the table.
Table it until the December meeting, or December, even December work session. would be
Okay,
fine.
well then, make it definitive so that your board members can understand what they would be making
Well,
a
see,
second
we
for.
can't do that at the work session, so I move to table this until the December meeting, by which time, according to the PDC 5-day rule and so forth, well, it depends on the workload of Steve as compliance officer. But it's very likely that he'll have these
Okay,
documents.
so Mr. Pollard, then is your motion to table this motion for censure to the December board meeting?
Yes.
All right, is there a second? That's what you need to inquire, Madam President.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now you would vote on whether or not you are going to table this. Does there need to be any further discussion? So there is a
further
motion and a
discussion?
second to table it to the December board meeting.
Is there any other discussion?
Then you would call for the vote.
Call for the vote. All those in favor say
Would you restate the motion, please?
The motion is to table the motion to censor Commissioner Pollard to the December board meeting. That is the question before the body. The President has inquired as to how you would then vote. Go ahead, Madam President.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose.
I oppose.
It would appear that the vote is 3-2, Madam President. The motion passes to table the motion to censure Commissioner Pollard to the December board meeting. That would appear then to conclude this.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry?
I said nothing. You just heard.
Mr. Pollard, if you said something and I didn't hear it, I apologize. What did you say?
I don't want to repeat it. I said charade because I think that's what this is.
Mr. Pollard, I would just
I have
ask Madam
freedom.
President to find him out of order at this time.
Would you be quiet?
And,
You are out of order.
all right.
Do I have, is there any other business that we need to take care of? Warrants, anything, public comment? Hearing none?
Madam President, let me just review your agenda to make sure that, yeah,
Okay.
the warrants have been approved.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that
We
the
have
new
to-
business,
Oh,
if you've taken action items on your rescheduling, the CEO salary, you have some items. I just want to make sure on your new business, you've taken action on number 4, you've tabled that. Number 3, it looks like you've taken action through a discussion. Number 2, if you've agreed to those dates, you should just formalize that. And I don't know that you've done that through a motion and a second and a
Can-
vote.
Can we
And you
do,
did not. So
can
you'll
we-
need to do that.
can we do that via internet when we all have our calendars? Does everybody know whether these dates are going to work for them?
I thought
We already
you
talked
had
about
that
it.
discussion.
We've done
Yeah.
this discussion at the
So
very
all you
first.
need now is a motion, a second, and a vote to approve those dates. And I think
Okay.
Valerie could provide those dates to the board.
Okay.
They're on here, they're
I
already on
made
here.
a motion to approve the dates of the change schedule. The November 27, 2019 work study changed to November 21st. At the regular work study meeting, which begins at 6:30 p.m., correct? We schedule all December board meetings due to holiday and schedule conflicts. The December 12 affiliation work study and the regular meeting December 25th. Proposed change is December 19, 2019. Start time is 3:30 p.m., correct?
That is a
Okay.
motion, you'll need a second.
And,
A
Do I hear a
second.
second?
A second.
okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we go for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to make sure all your action items were on your record.
Madam President,
Yes.
as a way of doing this, could we ask that we get an updated calendar and then see if anybody objects to the way the calendar is laid out, rather than, I don't know how else we do it, frankly.
Well,
I suspect that's.
Commissioner Pollard, you just voted as a body
To do it.
to
For the
undertake this. So you're basically making a motion for a reconsideration.
No, I'm
for
making a
calendar.
suggestion.
To get
Sir.
an updated calendar for
I'm
the board.
suggesting that one way to go about this would be to give us an updated calendar. That's just a suggestion.
I understand. I may have misinterpreted it.
Yes, you're
That's
not
Motion.
Okay. We're now down to the bit of the order, commissioner comment. And we're all limited to 3 minutes. Emma, do you have anything you want to say?
I am all for fairness here. That's one of, I like to think I'm a very independent. I like to be able to give everybody the chance to be heard. I know it's difficult sometimes for me, to express exactly and to articulate some of the issues that I feel very strongly about. And so I think it is a good opportunity for us to have tabled this censorship due to the fact that I have trouble with timing. And so the December, I think, is much more, manageable, I think, that we will have the time to really look into all the different, objectives and subjectivity of the case. Thank you.
David, do you have anything?
Not really good things to say, so no.
Jen?
Thank you to the hospital for all the Halloween-themed outreach. Little ones that I relate to and I see every day are going to be very, very excited.
Thank you, very good.
Next slide. Commissioner Pollard?
I just want to thank those that focus on fundamental fairness and don't play head games. So thank you very much.
Okay, our next scheduled meeting.
Madam Chairman, I apologize for interrupting, but I don't believe you took public comment. You need to do that. That is on your agenda.
Yes, she did.
And there was no public comment there?
Yeah, she already did that.
Thank you very much. Just double checking.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Did we adjourn? We didn't adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Any discussion? Nope. We're adjourned.